My name is Vip Vipperman, and I'm excited to be back in the studio today on the Backing the Bold podcast with my guest, Fiona Hall from UpFrom. So excited to have you in the studio today, Fiona.
Thank you. It's so lovely to see you.
The virtual studio, anyway. I love Riverside. I love how it can record us speaking together, and then it actually records each video individually. It's just a fantastic way to allow us to tell the story together, but also to allow your story to be recorded individually, so we can share clips and promote and do all kinds of fun things with it. It's honestly been mind-blowing how useful this technology is. So for all you out there podcasting, man, could not be happier with Riverside. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Fiona, we've known each other for a few years, and excited to dig into the story a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So confirming, I'm in Dallas, Texas. Where are you this morning?
I am also in Dallas, Texas, and my accent gives it away, doesn't it?
Right. Nice. Well, speaking of accent, tell us a little bit of your backstory. How did you get from where you were born to here?
Yeah. So my obvious adventure, the way I talk about it, Vip, is I'm just an adventurer who, like lots of people coming from the UK, just went off on, okay, let's go. Where can we go next? And so I came from the northeast of England and then went to Japan and then went to Scotland. And so I came to the United States from Scotland, from the beautiful city of Edinburgh 15 years ago. Mm. And then more adventures ensued. And I came originally having worked for many years in the film industry, and the part of the adventure that led me to the United States, I assumed that would continue. I assumed that we were coming here, myself and my husband, to continue working in the film industry and how all that storytelling worked. But it changed a little bit. I came and it was a challenge, and many of the solutions and ways that I want to affect the world actually were driven by some of the challenges I faced as a young mother in the United States, relatively isolated. But at the same time, I'm a very curious person, and so I worked in technology. I went back to school to study cognitive neuroscience, and all the while I was working in direct services in an organization in South Dallas. So really just hands-on, working with kids, working with families in low-income communities, and that's so much of the driver about why I am still on the adventure and that I am.
Amazing. So many countries in such a short time. And pretty cool that you came for one specific area and then it ended up leading you into completely other things. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Like your background just in media and movie?
Yeah.
And just give a brief overview of that. And then
yeah, I started with a film director called Norman Stone, who wrote a film called Shadowlands. And so I was highly connected with the work of C.S. Lewis. And so I've worked on movies that are connected to C.S. Lewis, worked in his office. In C.S. Lewis' office was our production office. And so I've had lots of adventures in... I know. I was blown away by being there. And just lots of different movie projects accumulating in my specialty is more in animation now. So worked on a project that was a hand-drawn animation based in Edinburgh where I was, and had an extraordinary team. And if I was going to start bringing together a theme, Vip, of things that I do in my life, it's working with teams to build creative projects for things that don't exist, but hopefully tell amazing stories and do something powerful. And so the movie we worked on, The Illusionist, was a group of incredibly amazing people who came together, and we made a film called The Illusionist, and we got to the Oscars in 2011. And that corresponded with me coming to the United States.
Yeah, to pursue your film dreams. Now, was there a moment when that just went, no, this isn't going to be it for us, and we've got to find something else? Or did you go, that was great, but I've got this other thing I want to go do?
I don't think there was a definite moment where I said yes or no to one way or the other. And in fact, I still work in the industry to some degree. I still am making a movie about World War II.
Okay.
But, right? Like I told you, I'm an adventurer, right? We do lots of things. But the call for me is driven by where I am in a certain circumstance. And the circumstance that I found myself in as I came to the United States was I had a 1-year-old. I didn't know that we were going to actually stay here. And then pretty soon I was pregnant with my daughter, whose birthday it is today. And the life experiences that meant that as I was coming into a country that I sort of knew but really didn't know, and I faced the barriers of 1, social isolation, 2, not understanding a culture that I thought I understood. Things like traffic and transportation in the DFW area. I had no idea that would be one of my first issues that I would come across. And then compound those with, we were starting out again, essentially, with the health, the education, all the things that you need in order to stabilize a family. We really didn't have a lot of that as we came to the United States.
Yeah, it's amazing how transitioning from country to country or these different types of moments can lead you to significant vulnerabilities, right?
Correct.
And it's really cool that it sounds like at those moments, though you face challenges, fortunately people didn't take advantage of those vulnerabilities. I know, unfortunately, a lot of the folks we work with through the technologies at Eagle and through some of our partners, serve vulnerable people all the time. And so excited to hear how your experience in being vulnerable and through those challenges helped lead into being now involved in UpFrom. So take us through that part of the story and how you got to UpFrom.
Yeah. So they are really directly related. So my experiences of being a mother who I had my husband, who's incredible, but the social isolation that comes with early motherhood specifically was extremely challenging to me. And add in the cultural challenges, add in the physical challenges of not being able to get to a hospital when you needed it when you're pregnant. All of those together started to drive me towards understanding how do we support people who are at the most vulnerable stages of their life. So there's 2 things that I did. I started working for a technology company, so got involved with, and have been since, what is the role of technology in that process? Although we weren't directly making for the sector that we're working in, I started to see how connected that was actually to the work I'd done in the film industry, even of how do you take something from nothing and you make something that hopefully has value. But the 2 things that I did directly was, 1, I went back to school and I studied cognitive neuroscience. And I was really interested in the challenges that we were having as a young family of where do we talk about self-regulation, what is happening inside our functionality, our brain functions, how do we address some of the needs that we were having psychologically, and how does that impact on thriving and flourishing, which is a theme of something I really care about. How do we go from, surviving to thriving to flourishing? Like, what does flourishing look like for all of us? And it turns out, when I think about the problem we're trying to solve is there's one of the key elements that I learned, and then I have all of the study and the background that I continue to do, but there's so much evidence about it, is that healthy relationships are the key to that flourishing, turns out. And so what we're solving it UpFrom, some of it was things that I needed, which was I needed healthy relationships around me when I was struggling.
Yeah.
And as I started to stabilize, I learned that I could also be part of the solution. So I went from, I don't know what I'm doing, to joining a nonprofit where I was part of a solution where I could help teach young people to read. And I was doing that with one child on my lap and another one running around, a toddler running around. And so it wasn't convenient, right? Like this wasn't something I was like, yay, like I've got time to do this. It was more of a like, okay, I have been so blessed by the sharing of people's lives with me during my life, and especially the hardest part, that the least I can do is share something that I have, which is I can speak English and I can read. Let's start there. And so jumping forward to UpFrom, what we are really doing is building healthy relationships and being the facilitator of those healthy relationships around populations like I was, who were struggling in a time when it's really challenging. And we're building so that we support the supporters. So UpFrom directly works with nonprofits and faith-based organizations because we know there are so many people, and you know this, Vib, in DFW alone, where we are, who are doing incredible work. They are on the ground every day, whether it's a food bank, whether it's an after-school programming like we did, and they're just doing the work. They're doing the relationship building. And in my experience, that relationship building is the secret sauce that every nonprofit or faith-based organization knows is the thing, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as I've looked into the technology side of things, there isn't technology, from my perspective, from both the builder and the user and as a staff member of a nonprofit, that actually says that relationships are the core. It's more about functionality of administrative duties, which is great. We need those. But we're building UpFrom so that relationships are the heart of what we do, because we know that's at the heart of what nonprofits do.
So for clarity, really quick, people think relationships online, and they either think of something like Tinder, not that, or they think of something like Facebook or TikTok, social media equals relationships.
Yeah.
I think you guys are doing something completely different.
Yes. So I'm going back to the more conventional idea about what relationships is. It is the connection, and we can talk about physical connection and the value of that, because studies show that that actually has extremely high value in terms of social value to our brain. Actually, we get a lot more dopamine hits when we're having healthy relationships in person. But it's essentially, it's the connection between people. And I specifically say healthy relationships because, as you've talked about, we've created systems where relationships are possible. In all of those instances, a relationship, i.e. a connection with another human being at its most fundamental level, is possible. It doesn't mean it's healthy. It doesn't mean that it feeds either of us. And so as we're building UpFrom, and we were pretty clear about what some of those values should be as we're building, they're built around what we know a healthy relationship looks like. And so these are safety, dignity, and reciprocity. And if you're missing those, it's not the only components of healthy relationships, but they're some of the core ones. And the safety includes psychological and emotional safety, as well as the key ones that we might imagine about physical or non-abusive relationships. The second part about dignity, I'm someone who believes in the dignity of all humans because of my faith beliefs of my image as the image of a creator bearer. I am a creator because I am born from a creator, God. And so that dignity is inherent as I look at myself, right? And so that I know my own worth, but I also can then translate that to the people around me and see that everybody has worth. And then the third part is reciprocity. And one of the things, as you mentioned, TikTok or other types of relationships, reciprocity is really about understanding you have something to give and I have something to give, and we both have value in that. And when we are having transactional relationships, as often things that are not proximal are, so things on technology bases that don't have a solid connection or a healthy connection, they can become extremely transactional. And you and I know, at its worst, that is more than damaging. It's the most harm we can do to another. And so if we look at the other side of that, and back to the lovely science and the social science and the psychological science, we can look at things like ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If we were to start stacking them up of things that cause harm to young people particularly, that then reflect on later life, it's things like having extreme poverty, but it's also things like having social isolation. It's things like incarceration. There's a myriad of things. But then we can look at what are the protective factors that mean that even if someone is going through those things, there are things around us, almost like a bubble, that if we have those, then we're more isolated, we're more protected. And those things start out with healthy social relationships with at least one adult. And so that's what we're doing at UpFrom, is we're building teams, we're helping nonprofits and faith-based organizations to bring teams around at-risk populations.
Okay. So it's like, walk me through the user experience a little bit that you hope to provide, right? It's like, this is the core of what you guys do. It's an individual who's a vulnerable person who a nonprofit is working with, and helping establish some relationships, and then tech enabling that process.
That's right. So first off, we start with the organizations on the ground. So we have to have, as UpFrom, a connection with the organization that believes in those values. That's first off. So as we connect with those organizations, and I'll give you a great one that we're working through, that we're really excited with in Tennessee, is Tennessee Voices. They are a large nonprofit in Tennessee, and their focus is mental health. So immediately we have a connection where we understand, great, you get the value of mental health as it supports someone in a healthy relationship. But not only that, you as an organization get it has to be driven by people themselves. So they're called Tennessee Voices because at their heart, they believe in the voice of the people themselves, driving and directing not only their own lives, but how services should be delivered. So we start with that. We find organizations that have a understanding and a value set that aligns with how we operate. Once we've made those connections, we start understanding their population that they're serving. So we are not necessarily going out and finding that end user. So in that sense, we're B2B, but we're very much thinking about the B to B2C, right? Yeah. We're looking at that C. And in the case of Tennessee Voices, we're working with young people who are aging out of the foster care system.
Okay.
And these young people themselves, no surprise, they're brilliant and they actually know what they're talking about. They've said that they need three things. One is safe housing. Two is access to mental health. And three is a safe adult relationship. And so we're working in conjunction with a flat called Lumen Flats in Knoxville. And that is purpose-built for these young people. So that's the first part, right? Is like collaboration with organizations who are already doing good work. UpFrom is we're not gonna build those houses. And then the nonprofit Tennessee Voices is providing the staffing to help that, the mental health therapist, a peer support specialist. So where UpFrom comes in that process, we're the facilitator. We are helping put that team together. Our platform allows teams to be able to come together. And then in the mobile experience, we connect the dots. So teams are built in the admin portal, and then they're reflected in our mobile app. And there's two different experiences, one from a mentor team side, and then on the other side from the individual or family household. And currently what we're doing is pretty simple, but it's what you need for the three things, which is connection, communication, and coordination. That's how we can start build relationships. So that's what we've got in our current software.
That's amazing. I mean, it's really providing those essentials that the person needs. In this case, the foster care youth, the relationships, the mental health support, and the housing, like the things that they desperately need. It's giving them those things in a way that helps like support them, connect them, feel cared for, and can be tracked, which I think is a big part of it too. So often these like foster care youth end up falling through the cracks, or just kind of, being lost in the system type of thing. But, in this case, you're actually being able to track how that's going, the impact. Do you have any stories yet? I mean, I know you guys haven't been, operational for a long time. It's one of the things we do at Eagles, invest in early stage companies.
Yeah.
But as far as, some of the progress you've seen, is there anything that's happening that's just getting you excited, or, a few folks that are starting to actually feel the wraparound services, as it were?
So the examples that we have are early stage, but a great example is what's happening in Annapolis. So the other part of UpFrom's journey is coming out of Annapolis, where Todd, who's co-founder and really central to the UpFrom journey, himself and Wes are crucial to how the team building idea came together, that you cannot do this alone. You cannot build alone. Back to relationships, right? Not only do the people that we're supporting need relationships, but the supporters need relationships in order to be healthy, because life is really busy.
Yeah.
And, and we change. Like, my circumstances have changed in the last year that would mean I don't have enough capacity right now to support some of the young people that I want to. But what's happening in Annapolis that we're really about to go much bigger on is that groundwork is being built around the communities that are doing the support. So as we are building relationships, that first step of who is doing the work, who is doing what work, it's really about ecosystem building. So we're doing the first step of making sure that the relationships are healthy on the ground with the people who are doing the work. And that takes time. Thankfully, Todd has already got a lot of those relationships, but it means regular trips for me to Annapolis, which is amazing, which I get to do. But actually meeting with the people who are in the teams. So we're about to launch in one of the communities there. I've already met the young people. I know, what's happening there. So it's literally a case of, I think this week or next, getting them into the platform, whilst building out that ecosystem of relationships that help to coordinate how we support people.
Awesome. So fun times as you're building pilots and growing the organization. So really quick, talk to me about like 2 or 3 of the lessons that you've learned as you guys have been going through this process. I mean, You've got experience in media and film. You've got experience in cognitive, and mental health, like training and understanding. You've got experience building technology. What are 2 or 3 of the key lessons that you've learned in doing this whole thing?
Yeah, I would say the first one, Vip, is you have to be profitable.
Yeah.
And I mean that.
Profitability.
I mean, yeah, and I mean that jokingly but sincerely.
Yeah.
Because our sector, the nonprofit sector, it's not equated with our work that you have to be at least drive some revenue and hopefully profitability, because it's considered a nice thing to do, right? To help people.
Right.
What I think, and my journey has increasingly come to this place as an entrepreneur, is it's okay to help people and make money. Right?
Yep.
Because if we're going to drive flourishing and wealth creation. If we're going to drive people to success, one of the ways we do that is investment. You guys know that really well. We invest in people financially, we invest in people in terms of relationships. And so I think a big turning point for me, so I built software before, and I was thinking so much about that end user and the nonprofit that I wasn't thinking about revenue in the way that I do now for UpFrom.
Yeah.
Not because I think it's the only thing, but I certainly hadn't given it as much weight as I do now.
Yeah.
Knowing that in order for us to be sustainable, we have to be able to generate, revenue at the very least.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's awesome. I agree wholeheartedly. You can scale significantly farther the quicker you figure out the revenue. But when you're building and serving, vulnerable populations, and your heart is in the work, sometimes it's very tempting to, let's not worry about the money right now. Let's just build something that serves these people that need us. And realizing, but if we do it with revenue and profitability in mind from the beginning, that we can build something much longer lasting and Lord willing, more impactful over time. So no, that's awesome. What are maybe two others? Anything else that sticks out is like a massive learning?
Well, just quickly, just an example of that one. Many years ago, I went into a school which would be considered one of the lowest performing in DFW. And I remember saying with the software that I just take it all. Just do what you like. I just love you. Take it all. And what ends up happening with me, though, is as a leader, I also get burnout, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly trying to drive all the aspects of running an organization while still trying to support the work of others. So I would say the other lesson is, as a leader, but especially someone who's working in tech and a woman who has a family, I have to understand my value. I have to understand where I fit in the process and where to build and trust a team to go do the things that they do really well.
Yep. No, I love that. We always talk about at Eagle, a talented team on a redemptive mission, fighting in a battle that matters. And we love to go into, on an adventure, into a battle with people that we like and we believe in and we trust, that we want to effectively go on mission together. It's really powerful to do that and to feel that about a team. So you guys are building the team and learning to trust them, to do their part. So that you don't wear yourself completely out. Yeah, entrepreneur burnout is one of the number one problems. Things like divorce and, bankruptcy and all kinds of other just life things happen to entrepreneurs, oftentimes multiples of other people because of the challenge that they face, the amount of time and effort they're putting into something, and how much they care about making it work. And so they oftentimes set everything else aside to grab the one, the goal, as it were. So learning how to do that well is definitely something that hopefully we'll continue to make up from, a great company, a great organization, and something that impacts a lot of lives. So what do you think the future looks like? If you guys continue to, right now it's the beginnings, one at a time, one foster person, foster child who's, starting to age out, 5-10 people come around them, tech enable that process and walk with them for a bunch of years and see them succeed. But what is it, the vision that you have? Can you imagine, hundreds would be great, thousands, tens of thousands? Is that where you guys think this could be going?
Yes.
All right.
I'm a big thinker, Vip, and my accent gives it away that I don't just think United States either. And so because of my roots in the UK, because of my roots in Europe, because of my connections, we're working with a partner who helps to bring mindset shift training to young people in Africa and around the world. Wow. We've got a global vision. Like the idea of bringing safe, healthy teams around people at risk when they need it most, and then supporting the supporters. is a vision that will never stop giving. And so the idea of tens of thousands of teams that are locally rooted, right? I want DFW to reflect DFW. I don't want it to look like Edinburgh or my hometown because they look so different. The idea of what is a team in DFW with all of our challenges, right? That's going to be much more of a transportation issue than in my hometown. Building localized teams that support people as they need it, when they need it, with the flexibility that they need in order to do that, whilst creating a win for the supporters, for those nonprofits, for those faith-based organizations who, as you say, are passionate about doing the work. But I think, as I've learned looking around the world, we often hold their hands behind their back, right? We're like, fill out a form, ask us for money, and then we'll give you money, and then come back with us with how you're going to report on that in another year, when that's not how people work. That's not how transformative relationships work. And so the goal is not just to provide that support, but that we provide sustainable ways for others to understand the work and understand how to get involved. So I mentioned at the beginning about how I got involved with a nonprofit. Even though my life was busy, I had a 1-year-old and a toddler, and I was starting to work for tech. But I was driven by a relationship that got me into the work. And so the idea that we can all do something, we can all be part of a solution, is also a big dream that I have, and I know Todd does too, that so many of us are frustrated with a big picture that we cannot see ourselves in. And so understanding that most of us live locally, right? I know my neighbors, I trust my neighbors, and I want to be part of their lives in my local neighborhood. That means I get involved with their lives, I get involved with relationships. That's something every single one of us can do.
Yeah, and honestly, every single one of us needs. It's amazing how when you're serving and you're helping, you end up building the relationships that you need as well, right? I mean, many people have that experience of being on a sports team. And a lot of times we think about being on a team and there's a coach and it's all about us winning. But the idea of being on a team and there's maybe the coach, but all of the teams come together to help somebody else win. It's just a fascinating, let's change the focus of team, but you get the relationships, you get the encouragement, you get the joy of seeing the win, but it's not your win per se, it's the win of somebody who's vulnerable and dealing with something difficult, and seeing them come through and change the trajectory of their lives. So how rewarding to imagine that can be.
Yeah, back to reciprocity. And many of us know that when we think that we're the helper, actually, you've got as much to learn, as much to give. There's as much coming your way. I have learned so much from working in communities with young people who are now becoming adults. And recently, I was back in contact with a young person from one of the neighborhoods that I'd known from early days. And we were on a video call, and this incredibly young lady whose life could have gone in the direction that many of us would hope it wouldn't. But because of the circumstances she was facing, because of the instability in the home, all the things we've talked about, I saw a young woman who was thriving. She was in a stable relationship. She was praying for us. She prayed for me in one of the challenges I was facing. And that is, I saw in front of me, Vip, what I would want UpFrom to be. That the prevention side of things that is really hard to see, right? How you would prevent someone going into a foster care system, or as we know, going into a trafficking system. What prevention looks like is getting involved with people's lives early and being part of those day-to-day lives. You're not always going to be in them. So I haven't seen her for a couple of years. Other people have taken up the baton of supporting her, and she's amazing. She's, driven. But at the same time, she looked like what an outcome would be for UpFrom, as she gave back to me, as she gave back to the community that she's in, as she's growing in her confidence. And it's so powerful to even get to see that. But even if we don't, right? Even if we're just the tiny part that says, you know what, I'm going to take you to that job interview, or I'm going to provide the resources that means that your lights are going to be kept on, whichever role you're playing. The dignity part means that we're all involved. The reciprocity means that someone else can gain and we all have something to give. And the safety part means that we have to build in safe, healthy psychological environments that build towards compassionate dignity, all of those things.
Nice. Very cool. Well, really quickly, just for that person out there who's like, they're more of the LP investor type of person, how does UpFrom make money? Or how will UpFrom make money?
Well, we already are. That's the first thing. We are post-revenue. So we're B2B, as I said. So we have a traditional SaaS model. So we sell licenses. Where we are innovating is in two areas, which is a marketplace where goods and services in the social sector, we are working on the dynamics of how we do that. So another revenue stream for us is a percentage of the marketplace. The other part is we're working on a blockchain wallet, which is really exciting. And so there's revenue in there too. The other aspect, which we haven't talked a lot about, is we have a connected foundation. And so that foundation itself is able to generate grants and start being able to, and already has started getting money itself. So, but a combination of those three things means that we want to have a stable revenue from SaaS because we know that what we're building has value.
Yep.
The marketplace allows us to have, especially as we're starting, a little bit more variable. And then something like the grants, because we're working through a longer cycle. That all works together to hopefully build in the dynamics that we all need when we're generating revenue to cover all the different challenges that come from all of our sectors, but particularly in the social sector.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Super encouraging to hear. And not that that you guys aren't even basing it just off of one area, but they're doing it in a couple different. So again, going back to one of those early lessons that you learned about profitability and revenue, it just helps. It's the fuel that helps the engine to keep going. And so encouraging to hear. Well, one last question I always like to ask people at the end. There's some places out there where they're like, no soliciting. We don't want your advertisement here. I'm the other way. I've been involved in events like the Lion's Den and different kind of places where it's just like solicit, please. I want people who listen to this podcast know what to do. They're like, man, I heard about UpFrom. I'd really like to get involved. Tell me some different ways people could get involved and specifically where they should go to do that.
Yeah. First thing, go to upfrom.com. There's information there about how to directly understand a little bit more about what we're doing, but also how to get specifically involved. So we are focused on a couple of cities. So Annapolis, I've mentioned. If you're in Annapolis in Maryland, specifically, go have a look at our foundation site, and we're building a lot of work around Annapolis. Get involved there. DFW, if you're in DFW, so much that is going on in DFW that is so exciting. Again, we're building here. We're actually hopefully starting the marketplace here in DFW. So if you go to our site, you'll start seeing more information about that. And the other part is join a team. So on our foundation site, you can click on and say, yeah, I want to start. So we will be connecting with nonprofits. If you're a nonprofit who wants to join us, great. Find me, Fiona at UpFrom.com, and we can support organizations, because there might be a city where nobody's doing any work, and we want to partner with organizations that share these values, share relationships at the heart, and they're ready to get started. And if you want to join a team and there isn't a city where that is happening, we encourage you to get on to us, and we'll get on to the organizations that want to support it.
Awesome. Well, a friend always say, all people have inherent value. In the Bible, we may say all people are made in the image of God, and he loves us and cares for all of us. But I love seeing for-profit technology figure out ways to love and serve people well and help them get from the vulnerable place that they are up to flourishing in a life that really finds joy. So thanks so much for the work that you're doing and the lives that you're impacting. So encouraged to have you on the podcast with me today.
It was so fun, Vip. Thank you so much for having me.